Alright, it's time for DMC2. Now, I know I've kept you guys waiting a while since last time, since I wanted to get this out within a week since the last one, but, well, I got a new lavalier microphone that you can very obviously see on my shirt, thanks to joining the association known as Bagogames, which I'm fully graciously for them accepting me into their ranks, and I'm fully hoping to just make better content just because of that. So, yeah. Let's just keep going with DMC2 and let's keep this Devil May Cry marathon going. So like before with DMC1, I'm going to be playing this on the Devil May Cry HD collection on PS4, so if you guys have much of a problem with that, then I wish I could help you, but I'm not going to hunt down a physical copy of Devil May Cry 2. So yeah, without further ado, let's...
Oh, that was annoying.
Hello there, Legon.
What are you doing on my TV?
Well, ever since you started working at Bagogames, you gave complete control of your assets and infrastructure. So I pretty much seized the opportunity and took control of all of your assets, including your electricity and, your games console. I'm gonna need you to drop that DMC2 review, because I'm gonna have you review this instead.
Alright, well you go ahead and explain the developers and where they came from and all that stuff while I get this set up.
Don't worry, will do. Developed by Invader Studios, Daymare 1998 is a survival horror game that aims to recreate the mood of iconic titles from the 90s. The biggest influence behind this project is none other than the original Resident Evil 2. This isn't surprising considering that Invader Studios' first foray into the game development was the now defunct Resident Evil 2 Reborn project, which offered a revival of the game with Unreal Engine. I played a little bit of an alpha of the game. It's an alpha, right? At the very least, it also brought some interesting concepts, such as the ability to aim your shots with your mouse and letting you change your camera angles on the fly. However, that ended up not meaning much because Capcom stepped in and asked the studio to shut down the project back in 2015. While the shutdown was tragic, the reason for it happening was that Capcom was working on its own remake of Resident Evil 2, which, as we all know, became one of the best games of 2019. Meanwhile, out of the ashes of Resident Evil 2 Reborn, Invader Studios commenced work on its own third-person survival horror game. At first they tried to use Kickstarter, but ended up failing in their attempt to lack of funding. The team was persistent though, and so they managed to get a few partnerships with some publishers and deliver what's now known as Daymare 1998.
Oh, so these guys made their own RE2 remake, huh? Well, now I have high hopes for this. Let's start with the plot, because if you guys couldn't tell that these guys were Resident Evil fans before, the intro doesn't even attempt to hide anything about their inspiration. Hades might as well be stars, but evil, and the Chapter 1 area is essentially an Umbrella lab, except, it's on a floating water platform. So the Hades agents go to a science station in the middle of a storm to retrieve some secret virus, and then narrowly escape from a zombie outbreak inside the lab, only to suddenly have the character called Liev, who you controlled in the chapter by the way, turned on everyone and killed every person on board, except for the guy that he actually kicked out of the window and the guy that he shot a bunch of times. But the one that he killed off screen, dead for good, never comes back. I'm not kidding. And I'm not even abridging anything. This is the exact order of events, with nothing left out. And I'm just going to say this right now, I think the animations are much better in gameplay rather than the scripted cutscenes, since more often than not, the arms and legs can actually move it more than just the shoulders and wrists, plus a lack of eye movements on the face is bothersome. But even then, idle animations beat the cutscene faces any day, so what's with that?
After the Hades raid, we awkwardly cut to this guy in a tower. We learned that this guy's name is Samuel Walker, who then just kind of forces himself into the plot after leaves a little stunt on the helicopter caused a zombie outbreak. Whoops. Anyway, Sam's wife dies thanks to the first guy that lived, the only name for him being Sandman, so Sam follows him on a trip for revenge, while reacting like any of us would to a zombie outbreak.
What the? Why is everybody acting like that?
I will give the game this though. When the game tries to do horror, especially with Sam's hallucinations, I think that this is actually really good. I just wish that the game did a lot more of this than it does in the entire product, you know?
Once Sam finds Agent Sandman, Sandman ends up killing Leah before things can go how they were supposed to. I genuinely have no idea what to say about any of this, because we're not even at Chapter 3, and spoiler warning, it doesn't get any more coherent. Sam watches this unfold and grabs Leah's HUD item before proceeding to meet some doctor inside this nearby hospital to basically do whatever the doctor guy tells him to do, since the doctor somehow captured Sandman, and since Sam is blinded by rage, he kind of just follows orders for an hour or two, padded gameplay to teach you things that should have been in Chapter 1, but whatever. After far too long in a very copy-pasted hospital environment, Sam finds the doctor murdered by Sandman and goes to leave the hospital.
But enough about that character, let's talk about the other guy that lived, Raven.
I wasn't finished.
Raven ended up falling out of the helicopter with a parachute, but ended up surviving thanks to a gas mask and oxygen tank. Then, once he goes through the best area of the game with more Easter eggs and references than you can count, Raven explores the now apocalyptic city to try and find the wreckage of the helicopter, which he does after exploring the sewer for a while. Once at the helicopter, Raven finds the fourth guy, who didn't survive, and then, after fighting off some mutants, keeps trucking along to try and find HQ before realizing they're not immune to blood gas, just like everyone else. Raven tries to call Sandman on his magic wristband, which ends up working for some reason, and they agree to meet up at Hexacorp Helipad.
Anyway, after Sam escaped the hospital and got to the city off screen, he ends up listening in on Raven and Sandman's call, trying to find a way to beat them there on the way to finish his one-note revenge plot.
Cut to 2 hours earlier, immediately after Raven's call to Sandman, and we can see Raven trying to escape the Hexacorp facility to find Sandman. Instead, he comes across this game's tyrant, who, after a very easily broken boss fight, is revealed to be Leaf. However, since he's the tyrant of the game, he of course doesn't stay down very long and chases you through the most unfair and designed segment of the game, where even at max health, you will instantly die. Every single time!
I was tempted to just drop the game at this point, and sticking through didn't feel rewarding after this whatsoever, but the only reason I really stuck through this was because I had to finish it for the review, and that is never a good thing. Once you finish that sequence, though, we get a boss fight with Leaf again, thankfully without any one-hit kill idiocy like before, and after you finish him off, Sandman appears out of nowhere, congratulating Raven on a job well done before things start exploding and stuff happens. Then we get a shot of this cleaner character who really meant nothing in the whole game, since he always plans things out and then admits at the end of the game that none of this was planned, therefore making him completely worthless. And if that wasn't bad enough, then Sam suddenly shows up. We get some things that I think are supposed to be plot reveals, which is then followed by a cliffhanger. I'm genuinely at a loss for words at how absurd all this is. What am I supposed to feel at the ending here? Emptiness? Because that's certainly accurate.
Yeah, back when I reviewed this game, I also didn't think too highly about this part of the game. However, despite the blind test of the ending section, the story isn't the big reason why you'd play the game. That's to be in the survival horror aspect of the game, so let's elaborate on that.
So like I mentioned before, I'm going to be playing this on the PlayStation 4 copy, and from what I know, aiming is far more accurate to do on PC thanks to just being able to aim with the mouse. But I'm here to play the PS4 port, so I'm playing the PS4 port. Let me just start off by saying that if the environment didn't already scream Resident Evil fan game, the gameplay itself certainly will, with the movement basically being that of the RE2 remake, but indie.
The references are really in the details though. Inventory is handled a bit differently than the Resident Evil remakes, like you only having 12 slots through the entire game, with 3 weapon specific slots as well, usually being a handgun, a shotgun or assault rifle, and a hand cannon, with some changing depending on your character or chapter. The inventory itself is handled a bit differently compared to the Resident Evil remakes though. While you may hold ammo and be able to combine it in the inventory which is real time by the way. You can also put ammo into magazines, which if you reload said magazine too quickly, you'll drop the magazine on the ground and will have to pick up later. I like this approach. However, I barely use the fast reload with the magazine since there isn't a fast or slow reload option for the shotgun anyway, and really the shotgun takes care of anything 3 handgun magazines can.
You can also combine other items in the inventory outside of just loading the ammo magazines a la Resident Evil 1. Combining some items you come across can yield items to recover stamina, health, increase your accuracy, or see item prompts like a psychostimulants in Resident Evil 7. Though health recovers over time in a regenerating manner rather than just instantly refilling a certain percent of health instantly. There's also the hacking cable item that you need to do these little hacking minigames that are extremely easy to do and only require timing. The puzzles, on the other hand, can range from absolutely amazing to impossible without a guide. For example, the first chapter of the game requires knowledge of the Greek alphabet, and later on you need to know Morse code.
Much like the Shakespeare puzzle in Silent Hill 3, it helps to know about these things beforehand. However, the game does throw in some clues to let you figure out the solution without prior knowledge. There's only a couple instances of needing a guide or help, but you shouldn't worry about it too much, especially with the internet. Speaking of the internet, there's a tie-in website for the game that you can enter codes into after finding files. While they may be empty in game, they will give you access to special info on the website when you punch them in.
Going back to the gameplay though, I wish this didn't feel so indie. The graphics aren't terrible, but there's a definitive lack of polish here that persists in the gameplay as well for me. Graphically it's fine, but there's an absurd amount of spots where you can tell they didn't have time to get everything exactly right, and the worst part of it all is texture loading that persists throughout the entire game, starting with Chapter 1, sadly, plus an absurd amount of pop-up, most notably in Chapter 2. Look at how many bushes and trees just appear from me walking where I'm supposed to. Ridiculous. Not helping are the obnoxious amount of loading screens, plus how unresponsive this port can feel at points. As for the music, it's very ambient and not that noticeable besides a single save room thing that only played once for me. I can't remember any of it to save my life, but at the very least I wasn't begging to turn it off.
Now, since this is a survival horror game, there are of course enemies to go around of, but it's usually just a common zombie that can either run quickly or go at you very, very slowly. But even they will just still grab you and take away your health by vomiting acid on you. Might be a little bit uncomfortable. Then there's what I call the super zombies. The pale one will swipe at you until you die, but can be easily taken down by a shotgun blast or a wall. Just turn left!
Last but not least are the mutants, one which can spit at you and another that can swipe at you with a blade for an arm which can take away your health fast when you aren't that careful. I'd just recommend running away from them whenever possible, but you run into the spitting variety more often than not, so just keep them at a distance or stay behind cover. Now that we've gone over essentially everything in the game itself, let's talk about some of the problems specifically on the PlayStation 4 port. I mentioned pop-up and texture loading, but this game also has a surplus of loading screens for areas that honestly shouldn't need them. The game also hung on a loading screen once when I had to reset the whole game and restart from far earlier than before I died, so that was fun. The frame rate will also occasionally dip and the game can outright freeze at points, making me think it's about to crash, which thankfully it never did, only hanging on that one loading screen one time, which I think might be patched at this point. But as a package overall, as a game, do I think this holds up and warrants purchase? Solely to support the devs, I'd say yes. It's not made badly. In fact, I can say they had a blast making this with the absurd amount of references and Easter eggs in this game, emphasized by the numerous reference achievements, but the lack of polish on the overall product makes it tough to pick this over the games this was inspired from.
So, did you enjoy the game?
It's weird. I want to love this game. I really do, but the game just lacks such a degree of polish that it makes it borderline unplayable at points, and I just wish that the developers had taken that in mind before publishing this. I know that they're indie. I know I should cut them a little slack, but they're being extremely ambitious. They gotta get some credit for that. And yeah, they do get credit for that. I will admit, it's amazing that they're trying to make their own budget Resident Evil, but they don't have the polish that it needs, because without that, there's nothing keeping me from just dropping this game and going and playing Resident Evil 2 Remake.
I think that Daymare 1998 is a great game for Resident Evil fans. However, you have to accept the fact that you're getting a game that pays tribute to the 90s while at the same time keeping all of its problematic design choices. It's a nice homage to the horror games of the decade that helped define an entire genre. Unfortunately, the game also doesn't move from the aspects that held them back during these days. The game is a full realization of everything good and bad from the 90s era of games, with some improvements of the modern era of gaming brought. If I were to remove my nostalgia goggles though, I will classify Daymare 1998 as a clunky mess that should have dropped the antiquated gameplay choices from the 90s. Yet, this experience remains fun for those few moments. I certainly don't play Resident Evil games for the story, so I feel right at home with the pros and cons of Daymare 1998. This is a niche game through and through, and as such, I recommend it for fans of the Resident Evil series. However, I'd recommend this on PC if you can get your hands on that. So I guess that wraps things up for today. I would like to thank you for your assistance, Legon.
Wait, you only made me do this because you don't have a PS4, don't you?
Excuse me, perish the thought! I didn't say that. But I did it.
Whatever. I'll see you guys with DMZ2.